as the title implies, I've switched to Neovim from using Vscode. Now, just saying that I was using Vscode and switched to Neovim, it's a bit reductive, but we'll get to it later. You might have clicked on this stream because maybe you're considering maybe trying out Neovim or potentially even switching fully to it. Maybe you don't necessarily consider it at all. You're like, that's too much effort. But you're still kinda interested, where if it's really good and really easy, you might consider it. Very smart position, by the way. So let's get this question, the most important question, out of the way. Is it worth it? Absolutely fucking not. Not even close. Not even close to close. It's about as close as the moon is to the Earth. Which is, yeah, it's technically close, but not practically. Not at all. Like, Jesus Christ. You might have saw the thumbnail of the stream, which is no longer, like, here. I don't know if there's a way to show it, but there's a face exhaling on the thumbnail. That expresses how I feel switching to Neovim. The overview of why it's not worth it is because it's a fucking mess. Neovim is it's a foundation, sure, but it's not a very solid foundation. It is filled with different, thingies that you clearly see are from the past, and they're not very solid to build upon. So you effectively take a building that's going to collapse in about 100 years, which that's really good, right? That's 100 years, that's quite a lot. Yeah, but you're building on this foundation that will last 100 years, a city that's supposed to last 1,000. I hope that's a good metaphor. Effectively, the foundation of Vim, essentially, it's okay, but not for the future. And that is what Neovim is built upon, and you have to deal with it more often than it helps you. So, how did the community solve this issue? Didn't really. It solved this issue by giving you 70 plugins to install. Now I'm exaggerating here, obviously. If I wasn't, I might have switched back to Vscode. I don't fucking know. But maybe I just haven't gotten to the point of 70 plugins, and I will eventually. Maybe I do have 70 plugins and I just haven't noticed. All of that could be true. So, to have functionality that you could expect from an IDE, and yes, there's this whole argument of Neovim is not an IDE, you're trying to force it into what it isn't. We might get to that if I remember it. But to get the features that you expect out of an IDE, you have to go through a lot of head pain trying to understand how these technologies fit into Neovim as an environment. So let's go over the mess. This won't be a tutorial because I barely understand it myself. So don't expect to be I see. Probably not exactly, but if I'm gonna be able to help you, that's gonna be great. So let's go to my plugins init. Right, and nothing LSP related is going to be here. It's going to be actually in LSP config. So yeah, first of all, the package manager that you can use to install plugins called Lazy lets you spread out your plugin definitions and configurations into multiple files. So that's what I'm doing currently. So let's skip this. that is an entire mess that I might also talk about. Hold up, let me actually write this in so I don't forget. Talk about Rust analyzer mess. So let's start with like the usual functionality that you'll want. An LSP. What the fuck is an LSP? A VS Code user might ask. Understandably so, because in basically every IDE you just come in and everything just works, right? And basically the same thing in VS Code. You just have to install an extension and boom. So let me actually show you this auto suggestions that give you function like completions and then maybe documentation. Let's do load file, for example. Might be able to show you documentation. Yeah, documentation. What else do we have? Snippets, like maybe you say local and then when you accept, you get put here and then you can move. That is a snippet. Wait, can I do DAF? Nope, because it's not filled. But if I fill it, oh, it doesn't have a name. Don't worry about that. That's like unimportant. What I'm worrying about right now. So snippets, then symbols. So being able to jump to a symbol. Maybe there is a certain variable like this one, I guess. And boom, you can jump to it. So features like that are provided by the LSP, which is the, let me try to remember what it's actually, what that abbreviation expands into. P is protocol. Oh, language server protocol. So effectively, it's a standard to build these features for any given language. And there are LSPs for most big languages and even some small ones that you can install and get this functionality. So your usual IDE like VS Code, Visual Studio, the JetBrains ones, they all use LSPs. I'm pretty sure. I would be surprised if that's not the case. So let me actually retract my words. JetBrains IDEs might not actually be using an LSP, but their own method, I think. But effectively the idea stays the same. It's a thing that gives you language-related features. Also refactoring, code actions, and diagnostics. Like for example, I go to this line, remove this, and it says, oh, there's a missed symbol. That's a diagnostic. It's also provided by the LSP server, usually, which we might get to. How do you get this functionality? By banging your head against the wall in Neovim. Cool, isn't it? I think it's fucking amazing. So, what do we start with? Yeah, we start with the fact that you should watch a certain video that let me actually look up. I might, no, I don't have it in there. I'm gonna actually turn off my screen, get the video, and come back. I'm still here, I'm not muted, or at least I shouldn't be. Because that video is just incredible. I watched the entire series and actually explains what an LSP is and how it works and all that stuff. Way better than I ever could. And now I'm not finding it, which is really annoying. Trust me, it's really important. Okay, maybe not to that extent, but like, I would very much prefer to give you the video. Ooh, yes, I found it. Nice. gonna grab a link to it and turn on the screen again. Boom, I'm back. So let me actually paste this here. Here you go. So I really recommend watching that video, and honestly the entire playlist, because those videos are just kind of nice to watch overall, and then they're also really educational. Like, the best Neovim content I've ever found. Definitely better than mine. So yeah, definitely watch that. And this specific video explains what an LSP server is, how to set it up manually, and then explains why you probably don't want to. So maybe you watch that video and you come to the point of, okay, I want to use something a bit more convenient to set up my LSP servers. Oh boy. So first of all, you install this extension, which makes it easier to configure LSP servers. It has quite a bunch of built-in LSP servers that you can pick from the list. How you can do that, you just go to the extension, and somewhere in there it will say, here are all the available LSP servers, pick between them, effectively. And then to set up your LSP servers, you do this. So require LSP config, the name of the LSP server, set up, and if you don't know how to set it up yet, you just empty brackets, like an empty Lua table. If you do, you pass the config. How you figure that out, oh boy, we might get to it. I love being like, I love scaring you. And you also make hotkeys, which I'm not gonna go over, that do all the various actions that I briefly mentioned, that you can figure out. That's like not a difficult part. Alright, cool. You picked some LSP servers, and maybe you set one up, and it took you like 5 hours. Just an example. Just an example. Cool. What next? Next, you have to install Mason. The fuck is Mason? I didn't really understand what it was when I was like setting that up. Mason is an installer. That's basically it. It provides you an interface to easily, well, at least in theory, install things, LSP servers included. I can probably show you. Screen key is in a really annoying spot. Okay, so Mason, I guess, yeah, just Mason. And yeah, here it is, the interface. And here it shows us, let's go to, just press 2, you go to the LSPs that you have, and it will show you which LSPs it has installed. And I'm pretty sure you have to use Mason to install them. Well, have to is a strong word. You're gonna be well served if you're gonna use it rather than not. Yeah, let's do it this way. I'm sure there's a way to install them like in the LSP config way manually, but you probably don't want to. You can also install them globally, which for what it's worth is very doable on Arch, because all of them are going to be either in a repo or in the AUR, but I simply haven't done that. Let's actually do it this way. No, I don't like it. Yeah, so effectively you probably want Mason, especially if you don't know what you're doing, and I surely didn't. Boom, Mason. We'll come to the later, like 3, 4, 5 tabs later. So boom, we got Mason. Now we get Mason LSP config. The fuck is that, you might say? Rightfully so. LSP config, or the Mason LSP config, is glue between Mason and LSP config, which effectively makes you able to auto-install servers that you have set up. So I set up OmniSharp, for example. I didn't have to go and install it on my own. Thanks to this plugin specifically, it got auto-installed with Mason via this option. Or you could specify them here, but that worked worse, so I didn't. And I instead specify them here. Cool. So 3 plugins so far. Doesn't sound too bad. Well, that's because the LSP part of the configuration is actually the easier part. It becomes a fucking nightmare once you come into this part. Jesus Christ, I have never been burnt out from configuration, I don't think. I don't remember that ever happening. I love configuration. I will configure until I'm dead, I'm sure. But this made me feel burnt out. So this is explained nowhere, or at least not in like understandable language, but this plugin, non-LS, which is a fork of null-LS, and null-LS is effectively, it forces formatters, linters, and debuggers, I think, to act as LSPs. Why does it do that? To make sure that you can use the same hotkeys. That's the start and the end of it. That's what it is trying to do. And in a similar fashion, it provides you a bunch of choices between different packages that you can install. So in the previous file, we could install LSP servers. So those, like the really good ones, like the Rust one, for example, it provides you with everything. So suggestions, docs, snippets, code actions. What else am I forgetting? Diagnostics, and more that I'm forgetting, like on hover, etc., etc. So the really good LSP servers usually provide all of them, but not all LSP servers are that great. Some of them have kind of limited functionality, so you have to fill in the gaps with some standalone tools. And for some languages there are no LSPs whatsoever, so you have to use other tools. And null-LS lets you pick effectively command line tools that do something, and null-LS has some built-in parsing of those command line tools to integrate those command line tools into your editor as LSP actions. And LSP actions in like quotes, because they're not LSPs, they're formatters, linters, etc. But null-LS forces these extra, like these extraneous, let's call them that, command line tools, forces them into being like LSPs, and so that they act as LSPs, so that once again you can use the same hotkeys. That's the idea, which is never fucking explained. Never! I read so much docs, and even though the idea is basically this, which if you explain it like this, you might think, oh yeah, that actually makes some sort of sense, like considering the terrible environment of Neovim, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Okay, Yeah, if only that was explained. It isn't. Throughout the documentation of everything, it is assumed that you're understanding like what's happening remotely here, rather than the usual experience of you're a user and you just fucking want like your language to work, like it used to on VS Code, kind of by default. And now you're forced to read about the implementation details of fucking non-LS, which you, let's be honest here, do not care about. It's rare that you do, and if you do, that's probably a bad sign because something doesn't work like you want it to, and you want to change it, and now you have to get into the weeds of it, you know? It's a fucking nightmare. So, non-LS, which is like first plugin, it is no longer maintained, so you install non-LS. It confusingly doesn't change any of the command calls or the requirement statements. Only the plugin name is called non-LS, while everything else is still null-LS, I think. That is confusing to me because I would prefer it if it would just change every call to null to none instead. It's kind of strange, but alright, whatever. Then, in null-LS, these formatters, diagnostic tools, and other stuff are called sources. Do you also like how basically every single program or software or library or anything else likes to make up its own language for no reason? Ah yes, let's call these sources. In my opinion, we should just call everything thingies. That's way more understandable. Sources is kind of an arbitrary word, and I'm sure it has its reasons, like, oh, that it's called a source because blah blah blah. That's always the case. But practically, it ends up being like not helpful, making up these words that don't actually convey meaning to me as the user. So they might as well be called thingies, but whatever. Sources are what you configure. So kind of like configuring an LSP server, you can also configure the thingy. And there's also a list of all the built-in thingies on the null-LS plugin page. You'll find it. There is actually a way to use null-LS to use some unsupported extra command line tool to force it into working for your editor. I don't know how to do that though. So you're going to be easier to like start if you just pick a built-in thingy for what you're trying to do. Cool, so you add it with this line to your sources. Now you might want to figure out how to configure it. And actually, let's do that later. How to config thingy. Boom. We'll come back to it because you won't be able to figure this out just yet, because obviously that would be too convenient. So you list your sources. Here, for example, I have a few sources, 2 for fish. I have prettier installed, so just like on VS Code, and Stylua. So I mentioned that some LSP servers are not like as good as the Rust one, for example. Yeah, I like thingies too. And with the Lua LSP, like language server, that is also the case. It provides most of the things, however, it does not provide formatting, or at least it didn't work for me. So I needed to use a null-LS thingy to get myself formatting. And you can see here that built-ins formatting style Lua. This is a formatter, which is a terminal command that you can use to style Lua files. And non-LS has a built-in for it that automatically parses its output to make it work with your editor. So it's actually very convenient once you understand what the fuck is going on here. But getting to that point is so fucking difficult. Like, it takes me a lot of time and energy. So I hope I will actually help someone understand this whole process. Maybe I should have looked for and saw like YouTube videos and the like to understand this all. But I'll say something conceited. No one does it like me. I find it like very rare that people explain essentially simple concepts in simple words. Very often people focus on correctness too much instead of trying to actually explain the concept. So for whatever reason, that's maybe not the case, but I feel like if I was looking for YouTube tutorials on this entire thing, it wouldn't actually explain what I was looking for. But I have no basis to go on from this. Like, that's just a guess. I might just be wrong. So, boom, style Lua, and now I can style my files. Let me give you an example. I change these to these, and I have it set up somewhere here. Yeah, I have it set up so that for Lua, the formatter prefers single quotes. And then I format the file, and you can see here that it got formatted. Without style Lua, if I try to format, it would do nothing. At least that's what it was for me. So maybe you're watching this in the future, and you're like, wait, I installed the language server for Lua, and formatting works. Congratulations. But it didn't for me for some reason. Probably because it's not implemented by the LSP. I'm pretty sure. I know, we'll get to configuration of this thing, but that's not like what we can do immediately. So we added a bunch of sources. Let's just assume we didn't configure them just yet. So we add a bunch of sources, but we need to download them. And then would you look at that, we installed another plugin called Mason non-LS, which you can probably guess is another glue between Mason, but now non-LS. Once again, confusingly, because we installed non-LS, but non-LS is effectively null-LS. So yeah, boom, another plugin, which effectively all you need to know about is that automatic installation, similar to the Mason LSP config plugin, makes sure that the sources that you have specified here are automatically installed using Mason, which is an installer. Boom. And then this basically means that you enable functionality that you wanted from non-LS to begin with. Cool. Maybe you don't actually have to have this here. I don't know. I just added it to be sure. Boom. When I explain all of this, it seems simpler than it was for me. If somehow you just add these 4 plugins with kinda my configuration and it just works, I'm gonna be actually happy for you. So I hope it helps. So let me actually give you the links to all of these, like I always do. So let's go to 2 files. The first one is LSP config. Let's do GHL Neovim plugins LSP config. Boom. This is the link to the latest commit, meaning that this file might not exist in the future. Let's parse branch head. And this is a link to the current commit, which actually doesn't exist on the remote yet. And it will shortly. Boom. Now it exists. Now the link works. So this commit is guaranteed to not be broken. The previous one is not. Now do GHL, but instead of LSP config, we say none, right? Null, yeah. And in a similar fashion, this link might be broken, and this one will not be. I'm not sure how useful my configuration will be, but maybe it will. Maybe you can use it like as a base. Didn't know you made the switch. Who could have known? Right. I was gonna get to singing your praises. I haven't gotten to that yet. Don't act like that, Sast. So, this sweet person, this is the one that has been helping me throughout this process. Without Sast, I would have died. I would literally throw myself off a bridge. Because Sast has the experience of using Neovim, as in pure Neovim, and experience with dealing with all of this bullshit, so that when it was too difficult for me to piece things together, I was helped by Sast, and I was able to figure things out. And matter of fact, without Sast, I wouldn't even know which plugins to install. I wouldn't know where to even go. I had no clue. But they gave me a list of all the plugins for all the different functionality that I might want, and I'm slowly still going through all the plugins. So, say hooray for Sast. Is the formatting supposed to be like that? Yes, but what do you mean? What do you mean by that, Otto? Is there something weird that you see? Like, that looks a bit strange to format like that. I wonder what you mean. So, yeah, it was incredibly fucking difficult to figure this out. But now when I explain this on stream, it feels kind of simple. Right, so I feel kind of stupid now. Tab indentation on GitHub. Yeah, I use tabs. And you know why? Because you can actually make them, and basically, if not specifically every editor, you can make tabs display as any amount of characters. So many people have called me a weirdo like that, but I like to display tabs in 3 spaces. I think 2 is too small, 4 is too big. 3 is perfect. I love 3. It's like literally the golden middle. Understandably, a lot of people disagree with me. Well, that's the thing. They don't have to follow what I like for me to still be able to use it. If I was using spaces and 3 spaces, you would have to deal with it. But because I use tabs, you can just decide to display a tab with some amount of characters, maybe 4, maybe 2. Maybe if you're also based and plus W and plus ratio, you might also use 3. So you get to decide, not me, which is why I use tabs. And if you don't know, you can go to GitHub settings, and there you can set up how tabs are displayed to you on GitHub. because by default they're very stupidly 8, which is entirely too much. So you can set it to 3. The correct answer is 3. The delay is so big, I hate my ISP. I'm sure it's on my side. It might be on mine. I mean, it says that stream is healthy, but my Wi-Fi is known to be kind of ass. So I don't actually know. Yeah, I still have it as 8. Yeah, you should definitely change it. I prefer -6. But it's not supported. How the fuck does that even work? Wait, no. Would that work? Basically, I think I know how this would work. It would work that this line, so let's assume that this line is the highest indented on the, like, on the thing, right? And effectively, it would work kind of like this. You get where I'm going with this? Yeah, something of this nature. And then basically the higher levels would go to the right. That's how a negative display would work. Which is really stupid and unreadable, but sounds kind of cool, not gonna lie. Oh, I was correct. Holy shit now. Yeah, so I'm gonna drink some water. Fun fact, this hunger widget, as I like to call it, is also your way to see more or less how long I'm gonna stream. Because I try to eat every 4 hours. Or rather, after I eat, 4 hours pass, and then I eat again. Because otherwise I get angry, sad, and like without energy. So I think I have like an hour in me still. So, how do you configure LSP servers? Let's start with LSP servers, which are supposed to be easier to configure. Fun fact, it is not. So I mentioned that one of the best LSP servers is the Rust LSP server, Rust Analyzer. And that may be the case. If you've used it on Vscode, it actually, like when you want to configure it in your settings, you get all the available options that you can set. You see all the thingies that may have those different options. It's all plain and simple. I've coded a small formatter in C++, that's cool, once for negative indentation because we were re-explaining arrays the 13th time that month. Arrays as I mean, yeah, I would imagine so, yeah. I fucking hate schools. Let me actually remember to talk about that too. Yes, this is something I can do. And I still haven't talked about it. It's in my notes to talk about this because it's really fucking cool. Yeah. I said a lot of we'll get to this. I don't know if we will. So, how do you configure Rust Analyzer in Neovim, which is usually pretty easy and seamless to configure in VS Code? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? Let's first... How do I... Like this, right? What was that? Where? This? Yeah, it's for the thumbnail. Right, so how do you configure the Rust Analyzer in Neovim? So, first of all, you go to lsp config Neovim. You go here, and then, oh, actually, there's a better method. I'm going to try to, strongman this. Effectively, try to give you the best possible way you could do this. I mean, the thing you said we'll get to later, but the delay got in the way. Oh, we'll get to this widget that I just wrote into. So you open Mason, I think. No, I'm wrong. Ignore me. LSP info, right? Yes. Yeah. So let's actually go to GHL. It's just some random Rust project. Just have some Rust project open, then do LSP info. It has to be title cased. Then you have your attached client. So for this file, we attached the LSP of Rust Analyzer. So you press capital K, I think. Nope. How do you do this? I forgot. How do you like this? Rust Analyzer. No? Really? Fuck, I don't remember. I'm sorry. And you can also argue that the fact that I can't figure it out in an obvious way is that it's not very figure-outable. So somewhere in here, yes, in server configurations, once it loads, blammo, Davai, no davai, no davai. Scroll, you absolute bitch. Here you go. So let's go to try to find Rust Analyzer. Any day now. I should have probably just searched for it. Boom. So you go to the docs to look at the configuration of some LSP. So you just saw that I went to a link from the README of LSP config. Then you look for the LSP server that you want to configure, and you eventually get to the doc somehow. So, all right, cool, we got to this. So it will now list every single option that you can set. And prepare for me getting really angry. Okay, so we can set Rust Analyzer assist expression field default. And you're like, oh, okay, I see. So does that mean, so let's go back to here and LSP config. Let's go back to the place where we configure stuff. So, so does that mean, let's actually go here. So here we set up the Rust Analyzer server, LSP server. And in setup, by convention, it has an opts table that has all the configuration that is needed to set up, in this case, Rust Analyzer. So surely that means, let's call this variable anal. So that just means, okay, so in the options, we say Rust Analyzer assist expression field default. I'll just copy that because obviously that will work. We do this. Oh, right, that doesn't work in Lua. So I assume we just wrap this in this and then in this, right? Hold on. I like these more. Cool. So this is the setting, and then we set it to default to do. Multiple issues with this. This is not at all how you do this. Not at all. Not even close. Not even close to close. Why it says it like this even though you said it very differently, I don't know. Especially considering... well, no, actually, it's not very fair, because this is the docs of Rust Analyzer, rather than the docs of LSP config. So it makes sense that it doesn't display like you would need to set it in Neovim. So I bring back my point. It's just kind of annoying, and you have to figure this out. Whatever. Not the issue of Rust Analyzer. But still an issue overall of setting it up on Neovim. The issue that is with Rust Analyzer is this part. Default to do. Cool. Fucking amazing. What are the other fucking options? Okay, you say the default is to do. And now you will say the other options are blammo, 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 and that's how it works and that's what it does. And another option, blammo, 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 that works like this and that's what it does. But no, that's just not the case. It's not here. It is never mentioned anywhere on this documentation page. I searched, I scrolled, it is not there. You just wouldn't know. Use the defaults or else. As in, you wouldn't figure this out. The way that I did figure this out, because I eventually got everything working how I wanted to, is really stupid. Let's go to my home directory and use fd-u. This is a better GNU find tool, and -u makes sure that it also searches for what I'm looking for in hidden folders, so folders that start with dot. Cool, so Rust Analyzer, and we find, in this case, this. This is the directory that contains the Rust Analyzer binary that got installed by Mason. Cool. Let's go there. And now let's rip grep, I shit you not, for, in this case, to do. And we found this random ass JSON file that is used for the, like, for integration with your IDE rather than for a user to be reading. As you can see, this is not meant to be read as is. It is not meant to be read as a JSON file. But yet that was the only fucking way to figure out something as simple as the different options on a configuration option, which should, by all fucking accounts, in the documentation. I'm so mad. And Rust is usually the language that is documented incredibly and so well that it's just a pleasure to work with, even though the language itself might be more difficult than other languages usually. The documentation usually like makes it easier in a way, except this situation for some odd reason. And before anyone fucking says, oh, you should commit a pull request, this should not be my responsibility. I do not care. I sincerely do not care. This should already like be in the documentation. That's not a crazy ask, and I don't care to work on it. This is also propagated the jQuery agenda. Is jQuery something that you can use in the terminal to parse JSON? I only slightly know about jQuery, because if so, that's actually a functionality that I wanted to make my own program for. And if so, I should probably learn jQuery. Wait, does jQuery stand for JSON query? What the hell? Wait, you really? That's crazy. So, long story short, I have this JSON file. I won't give it to you though, because I might move it or remove it, and well, I'll give you a static link, I guess. Wait. Huh? So they're different. They're confusingly similarly named. JQ is a binary to parse JSON. Okay, I see. I might actually look into that because that's actually pretty cool functionality. So let's go to docs Rust Analyzer. I took this JSON file, I formatted it so it was a bit more easier to read and explained why this even needs to exist. here in this comment. So let me actually give you a link for this. So docs Rust analyzer. Oh wait, hold up. Parse branch head. I'll only give you a static link for this one because it's unlikely to change. And it's far more likely to be removed or moved by me, so a dynamic link doesn't really make sense. There's also TQ and YQ for TOML and YAML. That's really cool. Being able to easily parse those from the command line is actually really powerful. Could be used for my fish shell scripts. And make wrapper script function MQ to choose the correct... That's pretty cool, yeah. Neat, nice idea. So, how I figured it out is that we search for to do here, and here we actually get what we want. So, expression fill default, we can see, so this is the other option. The default is to do here, right? Yeah, the default is to do, but there's also another option called default. And now you actually get the descriptions. Fill missing expression with the to do macro. And fill missing expression with reasonable defaults. Cool, and now we can actually go to LSP config to change that configuration somewhere. To do. I assume I just ignored it or was fine with the default. I would actually change it, but whatever. Doesn't really matter. Cool, how do we actually configure this? In the main table that we passed to setup, we have the settings table that has this table with the name of Rust Analyzer, and then the configuration options come. So as you can see, they're not in the same format as these are, and you have to effectively guess. These has worked for me so far, and they seem to be correct because everything works how I expect it to, but maybe it doesn't and I just haven't noticed. See how here it has, so the main name, the name of the main table, which you can see is this one, and under it we have assist. Oops. We have assist, which might be somewhere here. I don't think I change it. Yeah, I guess I don't change it, but effectively it would be here. Assist. And this is a table because it by itself is not a config option, but it does contain another config option. So we can say expression default, what was it? Fill default. Fill default. And we set it to, why does it keep like, okay, I know why it keeps bringing me back to chat, but it's still very annoying. Let's add a comma here. So assist in that case was a table that contains other config options, and the last thing, the last part, is the actual thing where you set the value. Here, for example, it's a bit more strange, I guess, and it's pretty common in this specific thingy. So we have completion table that has this option, full function signatures, but it's actually also a table that contains, for as far as I know, the only config option, which is enable. True. Interesting, rather than doing something like this. So this is common, don't get surprised. So effectively, maybe this is just unfortunate, and this is the only LSP that was this annoying to configure, and everything else actually has good documentation that is pretty easy to use, and it has examples. I'm stretching really hard here because it's definitely not the case. But yeah, this shit was really annoying. And this configuration that I have here is guessed. This is a guess. A reasonable guess. I have quite a lot of experience with configuring, so I have some sort of instincts for how things usually are and usually should be. But it's not a guarantee. So yeah, this was very, very annoying. But that's the idea of how you configure a LSP server. You go to the supported LSP servers in LSP config. You make me remember that YouTube video, which is like a meme, writing code in Microsoft Word. Fucking hell. You go to the listed servers that are available in LSP config. Then you click on that link for your specific LSP server. You get to the docs. You get disappointed by docs. You search in that directory and try to search for what you're trying to configure. Boom. The PowerPoint one too. Wait, writing code in PowerPoint is crazy. I mean, you probably can, like Visual Basic. No, not Visual Basic. Or is it Visual Basic? What language do you use to program Microsoft Office? I don't remember. So effectively, after a lot of suffering, boom, and blammo. That's some insane stuff, not Visual Basic. Cool. What about null? To make you a refresher, null uses terminal applications, or rather terminal commands. There are formatters, linters, etc. to force them into acting like LSP so you can use the same hotkeys. Configuring them is actually quite a bit easier, at least in my limited experience. First of all, you do a similar thing. You fd-u, in this case stylua. This is a formatter, not an LSP. And you search for similar directory, Mason, and here you see, it's essentially how I figured out that this is the correct path. I should probably explain this. I noticed the binary, because it's green for me because I use fish shell, and then looked at the directory that contains that binary, and this is the correct path. Cool? Cool. We go there, and here we have the stylua binary that is installed by Mason. Now, actually, you don't have to install everything with Mason. It's just kind of convenient that way. You could just paru stylua, and let me actually show it in another terminal. You can paru stylua, and boom, you can like install it like this globally. And it's actually pretty easy to use it like this. Blammo. But this is technically more cross-platform, so I didn't particularly care to use Paro for this, like to use Arch to install things globally. So I just installed them locally with a Mason. Boom, we got stylua. You say stylua, ladna, stylua, like this, I guess, -- help, and you get the help page of this given program. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy trying to configure this from Nix. Damn, I honestly don't know. But SAS uses Nix, so maybe it's like alright. Usually with Nix you can you disable Mason. Huh. So effectively, here just look at the the flags and what you can set them to be. And that's it. That's like quite a bit easier to figure out, don't you think? Because it's not obvious that you have to search for a JSON file in the root directory of your LSP server to find the file that your editor uses to talk with the LSP. That's not obvious. It's way more obvious to look at a binary and its help page, right? Boom. So what we have here is require built-in formatting style Lua, and usually you don't actually have to have this. You just say style Lua, and boom, you go on to your next source, like I do in these ones. I don't specify any configuration yet. I might in the future. But if you want to give it more configuration options, you use with and provided a table that contains different configuration things. So there's args and extra args. You should probably use extra args. Extra args appends arguments onto the call of style Lua, the binary. Args replaces the arguments, which it probably shouldn't do, because the default arguments usually make it easier to set up range formatting, for example, and other stuff. Makes other stuff trademarked easier. So you should probably use extra args unless required otherwise. I'm currently just using Neovim with 0 Lua, so I have no idea what I'm looking at. Yeah. So are you using Vim script for configuration? Effectively, what I'm doing here is, yeah. So what I'm showing here is for a Neovim user that maybe used Neovim on the side, or already kind of knows how to configure it, more or less, some parts, but wants a bigger overview over the LSP things, which is very specific, I know, but that's what my content is usually. Neovim is a double-edged sword. I'm sure it is. As a data scientist, does it make sense to use Neovim? I'll come to this conclusion, or rather I will explain my conclusion just a bit later. Should Neovim? We actually are going over the config thingy right now. Should Neovim? Yeah, we'll come to this question. It's good if you know way more Nix than Lua, or if you don't know Lua at all, but if you need or want to access the full functionality of your editor, you need to learn Lua too, and the how. Neovim abstracts its configuration. I assume it's also going to be pretty nice if you fucking despise Lua, which is the case for me, and I currently use Lua to configure Neovim, and I use Lua to configure awesome window manager, which is really unfortunate because I despise Lua. It essentially adds another abstraction layer on top of Lua to config through Nix, and for all the Lua specific stuff they tell you to just shove it all in a string. Yeah, that makes sense. So extra args is to add more arguments, and we also have file types, which only enables this thingy, in this case a formatter, for the specified file types. I specified them here because I wanted to disable prettier for Markdown, because I want to get a specific formatter for Markdown, because you can't actually configure how prettier formats Markdown, and I really hate the defaults. So I'm gonna go look for a formatter specifically for Markdown, configure it, so I have it like I want it to. So you can specify file types to use different thingies for different thingies. Make sense? Makes sense. And that's basically the start and end of the configuration. There are more options that you can learn about on the non-LS README. It actually explains those pretty well. Those specifically. Doesn't explain everything very easily though. And coming to your question, should you use Neovim? Truthfully, like, this reverts me to the start of the stream, to something that I said I'm gonna get to. It's not fair to say that I switched to Neovim from Vscode. That is technically true, but that hides a big part of it. In my opinion, you should get the default file types and remove Markdown specifically. That's exactly what I did. Yeah. I've been using Vim and Neovim for quite a long time. I have a whole playlist on it actually. First, I tried out the Vim emulation extension on Vscode, and then I found this incredible extension, which is called the Neovim extension, which uses a real Neovim instance under Vscode and does the textual changes on the Neovim side and does the GUI changes on the Vscode side. No, you're overriding the defaults here with something different than the defaults. Doesn't matter, don't care. I'm not gonna waste more time on something that really doesn't matter. Okay. So that Neovim extension is what I've been using for a really long time. And that is the Neovim experience that I recommend to basically every person. Like, basically everyone. Because you get all the features from Vscode that already work in a reasonable enough way and in a usable way, in a you don't have to think about this kind of way. And you just set hotkeys in Vscode, boom, you're done. Additionally, you can make your hotkeys be smarter by using when conditions to make sure that some hotkeys do VSCode stuff and the same hotkey in a different mode, for example, does a Neovim thing, right? And then also you can use both Neovim plugins that don't depend on drawing windows like this, for example. I don't think you can use Telescope on VSCode, but you don't need to because it already has that functionality, you know? And you can use VSCode extensions. So your setup of language on VSCode is just installing an extension. Boom, you're done. And for the cooler functionality of Neovim, like, oh, let me fucking change this, wait, what was it? This block? This argument. Yeah, I guess this is an argument. Boom. For this kind of functionality, you can install plugins on the Neovim side, and both of them, VSCode and Neovim, work together in harmony, kinda, to get you a very solid experience that I would recommend to everyone. So if wait, why can I not scroll? Oh, interesting. So as an answer to your question, I recommend using Vscode with the Neovim extension. That is the TLDR of my answer. But the longer version of my answer is that the average person just wants to, like, their editor to work. They might be interested in a cool feature or two, but it's not the start and end of their life. It's like, yeah, sure, cool, but I don't care that much about it. I just don't want my editor to be too annoying. And yeah, then I'm fine. If you're that kind of person, you're gonna spare yourself if you're not gonna go into Neovim, like the pure Neovim, which I'm using right now. Pure Neovim is for autistic people. They are so particular about every single minute detail, and they want to control it and write code for it to define really specific behavior for it. Then Neovim is for you. You're gonna struggle, you're gonna burn out, you're gonna scream at a wall and bang your head against it, but it is going to be for you if you're the type of person to want this precise control. That is not the usual person, though. The usual person is normal or allistic, depending on what term you want to use here. And for the usual person, you should use Vscode, like for real. And use Awesome too. I want to use Neovim. Okay, that kind of changes things. If you're the type to use Awesome Window Manager, which to me now is known as you have to make all the functionality yourself type of window manager, then yeah, then Neovim is probably for you. Because on Awesome, I mean, maybe there are plugins that do this functionality, but I haven't even looked for them because that's not what I'm interested in. On Awesome VM, you have to create the Wi-Fi widget, which you have everywhere. You have to make it yourself via terminal commands and updating the widget on your own with your code. Same about the Bluetooth widget. Sure, you have the clock. That's fine. That's a pre-built widget. The volume widget you also have to make yourself. The mic volume widget. The hunger widget you definitely have to do yourself. And that's the benefit of Awesome Window Manager. On one hand, you can make everything work exactly how you want. On the other hand, you have to make everything work exactly how you want, because it's not there by default. So if you're the type of person to enjoy control despite having to take that control, Neovim is for you. If you're the type of person that I just want a reasonable, good experience, going way too deep isn't that important to me, you should use Vscode. And for the love of God, do not get intimidated by fucking the Primogens of this world to feel like you have to go to pure Neovim. No, you really don't have to. You might not benefit that much from it, and it might burn you out and feel like this whole journey is not worth it, because maybe it is not worth it for you, and that is valid. Please remember this. Yeah, that's my rant. The issue with the VS Code approach to language support is that if the extension breaks, you're fucked. Downgrading to an older version is pain. It's actually isn't. You can do it very, very easily. It's not portable at all and hacky in a bad way. Really, my experience with downgrading a version was really easy. You just right-click, downgrade, boom, I'm pretty sure. Like, I think it was really easy. Or maybe I'm misremembering. So, why am I even... Let me actually edit this. Why am I even switching to pure Neovim then, if I'm singing praises to VS Code that much? That is because I am the type of person to want really, really precise control over every single possible minute detail. And for me, this is what I want. It is shitty, but I love it, you know? If you feel limited by Neovim and are willing to sacrifice your pinky and are willing to write Lisp Emacs, Lisp Emacs is even more hackable option. I feel like I'm gonna like Lisp more than Lua, for what it's worth. Although it's an OS, not really an editor. Yeah, I don't even want to try Emacs because I'm afraid that I'm gonna like it. The same way that I didn't want to try Vim for the first time because I was afraid I was gonna like it, and Linux because I was afraid I was gonna like it, and a different window manager and switching to pure Neovim, there's a lot of things in my journey that was always understood that I would eventually come to, but I was afraid of trying them out because I knew I was gonna like them. And switching to pure Neovim is one of them. It's just part of my journey. It's destiny, honestly. Like, for a trans girl who does Rust, uses she, they pronouns, by the way, since recently. What other stereotypes do I have? Oh, the pink striped thigh highs I have. What else? Like, it's a whole pipeline. There's a whole meme about it. Yeah, like, it was in my destiny to eventually switch to pure Neovim. It just had to happen. So for me, this kind of thing is just, it makes sense, but it doesn't for everyone. The pipeline is so real. It is so real. Like, honestly, not gonna lie, a big part of the reason why I even started learning Rust is because I found it funny that I'm trans, and like, it would be funny if I went along the pipeline. And that's how I started learning Rust. And if you want something in between Vscode and Neovim in terms of ease and configurability, there is Helix. It does not have a plugin environment yet. I'm effectively waiting for something better than Neovim to come out and kind of get a community somewhat so they can switch. Because Neovim has a really shitty foundation. Don't worry, Emacs is slow, can be slower than that's crazy. Unless your PC is quite strong, you will have a hard time. Huh. They're called programming socks, use the proper terminology. Nah. I like calling them thigh highs, whatever. I want to move this eventually somewhere. Maybe, ooh, yeah, I would move it like here to make it absolutely fucking impossible to see for you. Before I tried Neovim, I was trying Micro, which is just an updated Nano with extensions, I think. Yeah. I heard good things about Micro. The fact that, like, it's a simple, easy to figure out, like, reasonable terminal editor. I feel like it's the type of editor that you would use for quick edits, but not necessarily as your main editor, which is also like a valid thing to have. But if you do indeed configure Neovim to the fullest extent, you don't really need to have an editor for quick edits, because like this, like, as fast as it needs to be. Like, it opens immediately, and there might be a delay because I'm streaming, and not all of my plugins are lazy, and I want to work on that still. But like, that's already enough speed, you know, to not have to have a quick edits editor. That's what I use CAC for. Right now I use Micro and VS Code. Yeah, see? So if you're the type of person to use awesome window manager, then I think switching to Neovim is going to be a good move. However, expect to spend at least a week on it, honestly. So far it's been like 3 or 4 days, I think. And I'm not done. I still don't have a file management thingy that I want to do. I haven't finished configuring git diff, and currently you can see colored line numbers. They specify that all of these lines are new. That is configurable. That's not the default, by the way. So git related stuff, and there are more things that I haven't yet configured, but I'm like, let's say 60% in at about 3 to 4 days. Yeah, a week, assuming no distro. And that's actually a fair point. I'm the type of person to want to start with a clear config and then build my thing for myself. rather than trying to figure out a mess that is already predefined and makes me have to shovel shit out of the way instead of shoveling shit towards me, you know? So maybe you'll actually consider doing something like picking Astrovim and then configuring it to what you want to be. But I personally decided to just continue on from my config and configure everything like for myself, to build my config on my own. I feel like it just depends on what type of person you are. But yeah, it might be a more reasonable idea to start from a distro. Entirely depends on how, like, insane you are. I'm moving very slowly with Neovim since I kind of suck at using my keyboard. That's okay, that's absolutely okay. You get better at it. Like, absolutely, don't worry. It's just literally a matter of time. And also a matter of sometimes slowing down, actually, and trying to redo the same action in multiple ways to try to be the most efficient. Like, I want to give you an example. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good example going to be. So let's say I want to replace this specifically. And the way that I would do this usually is go to the start of the line and then do C dot. That is done by a plugin. It lets me, it's a text object for everything up until the last character on a line. That's what I'm used to doing it with, right? So this is already in my muscle memory, that is obvious to me. But now what I realize is that, I recently added a new text object. So I was here, remember? A new text object that lets me change inside argument. And I remember that in Lua, I've tried this out already, this can actually work on a table key. So even though I already did my action, I'm like, hold up, no, let me actually try out something more efficient. Even though I'm taking time right now and I'm being slower, technically, right? I'm like, okay, let me actually try this out. Interesting. Huh. Would you look at that? So I actually took some time to figure out a potential better way of doing this very specific action. And to get the best at Neovim or Vim, you really should give yourself time here and there to try out things, even if they slow down your flow at that current moment. They may be worth it to learn and to get used to using them. Boom. So don't worry about it. Just continue practicing and continue trying out different things. You will eventually become very, very fast. I recommend using Vim Tutor. Yeah, definitely. Vim Be Good is also very, very good. I super recommend it, especially for practicing relative jumps. Relative jumps are like really big. Less big once you get leap, but you don't always want to leap, because leap is slower. You can see me using it, and that's kinda how much it takes. It's not the plugin's fault, it's my human brain at fault. And this is faster. But with leap, you have to do less relative jumps, but relative jumps are still amazingly important. And the hard time, that Neovim plugin. At the start to get faster with the keyboard. What is hard time? I don't have to learn it all immediately. It's impossible to learn all of them. Yeah, absolutely correct. And don't worry, you don't have to, because let me actually go show you the docs on something. I think it goes like this. No. I wanted to show you a really useless built-in key map, but I don't remember what it is. Matter of fact, I'm gonna return in a sec. I'm back. Yeah, basically, who could have known? I don't remember useless hotkeys, but one that I can actually show you, and I do find useful, but even though I never use it, is G capital M. Well, I have it remapped, unsurprisingly, but for you it's going to be G capital M. For me it's going to be GM. GM by default goes to the middle of the line, I'm pretty sure. But you can specify something like 22 GM, and that will jump to 22% of the current line. Sounds cool, isn't it? Right? It is, like, I find it super cool, but practically it's pretty useless. For example, what percentage is this character on? Like 30, I think. I made my mapping G lowercase m, so it's easier to press. And when I say 3, what it ends up meaning is 30. It appends a 0, so it's like a bit faster to use. Huh, I guess that wasn't 30%. Now maybe you guessed correctly and it's like, oh, it's 35, which, oh, it's 40, I guess. See, like, it's very hard to mentally split apart a line to figure out where each percentage is. So interactively, it's not very useful, but it's definitely very cool. And we'll keep on learning these type of things very often, and some of them will stick. Maybe you will actually find this idea really helpful and will actually use it, even though I don't. Yeah. Hard time Neovim notifies you when you do stuff like DVI instead of CW. Yeah, that's very good. I've never considered. Oh, that feels so weird. That feels illegal. Yeah. Or $J. That's even weirder. What the fuck? Wait, I get J dollar. That I get. Like, that I get J dollar. That makes sense. But $J is crazy. I do realize that once you go to a certain column, in this case the end, it is then remembered that, oh, you were at the end of the line, let's go to the end again. But still, it feels really strange to do that first and then code to the line. It is a bit nicer though, now that you mention it, because I press $, nothing happens presumably, or often it won't, and then when I move where I want to be. So that's actually pretty cool, although it's really strange. Let me actually write this down, because that's a really cool tip. See, really cool tip, and I've been using Vim/Neovim for like 2 years now? Well, at least 1.5 years. At least. It is somewhere. Sorry to disturb, what is the Linux distro they're using? Yep, correct. EndeavourOS. It is spelled, I have, wait, where would I, this, yes. EndeavourOS. However, EndeavourOS comes with a different environment by default. It uses KDE by default. Is it not bloated? The idea of EndeavourOS is pretty simple. It is to be easy to install Arch. So in accordance with that idea, it tries to install as little extra software as possible. You will actually often find yourself installing software that you thought would be included by default but isn't. Well, yeah, it's not exactly a minimal distro either. It is reasonably filled with things that you would expect. Like, you won't find yourself having to install a driver, for example. Like, the things that you would expect to be in an OS are going to be there. But like, you won't come across having to install a bunch of stuff. But it's not meant to be exhaustive by default, so it's reasonably equipped. I wouldn't consider it bloated. Yeah, exactly. So it is reasonable. Yeah, it is reasonable, but in a lot of places it expects you to be the one to install things rather than you to be the one to uninstall things, you know? By default, it uses KDE, so KDE is good overall. And it's probably going to be the best supported. Yeah, so you could pick that. But the environment that I use is Awesome Window Manager, which I do not recommend. As the first thing, you would die, or at least I would, so I don't recommend it as a first thing. And I don't recommend it to a person who who just wants to live a normal life, I guess. Because I have a dilemma. I'm entering uni and I have been using WSL for years now. I wanted to switch to Linux because I game a lot. I'm reluctant to switch. Yeah, dual booting is something you can do, but honestly, I have a couple of games that I've played on Linux and they just worked, thanks to Proton. In some cases, they have actually ran better than they did on Windows. So in my experience, most games are going to work like you would expect, especially on a gaming supporting distro like Pop! OS. I think it tries to support gaming in some way. Yeah. So it should work already, and when it does, it will probably run a bit faster than on Windows. But there are definitely still some games that can only run on Windows, and if you care about that, you can dual boot. So you can absolutely switch to Linux, because I don't assume that you spend most of your free time gaming. And I guess even if you do, you just like restart, boot into Windows, play a game, boom, you know. With i3, but still. Oh, I see. So you already used the window manager. Thanks a lot. I just wanted to say your videos are cool. Thanks. You're welcome. Proton works pretty good. It just depends on the games you're playing. Have weird anti-cheats. Yeah. Like, the games that I usually play are roguelikes and I guess indie games. When I do play games, like, that is very rare on its own. I play games very rarely. Huh, interesting. Wait. Oh no, actually, boring. So boring. I noticed something that actually didn't mean what I thought it did. Yeah. So, yeah, most of the games that I can potentially play are supported on Linux, either directly or through Proton. So the Linux gaming experience is overall good. Well, it's fine. Let's not call it good, it's fine. It is quote unquote probably gonna work. The best experiences for gaming are probably Pop! OS, Stream ISO, Camaro OS, Brazide OS, and a specific Nix OS config. But only Pop! OS and Nix OS can be easily and reasonably used for stuff other than games. Here you go. Yeah. SAS definitely knows about like the other options more than I do, because I also used WSL for a long time. First Ubuntu, then Kali. Then when I switched on hardware, I picked Debian, which was a really big mistake. And it also was running Wayland, which was also a big mistake. I ran from Debian in like 3 days, I think. At best a week. Ran to EndeavourOS, and I've loved it ever since. I love it so much. I can't necessarily say that it supports games incredibly, though. So if games is like a really big focus for you, I don't necessarily recommend EndeavourOS or Arch overall. I think it's a bad idea. I don't know though. I've like the only distro that I spend a long time on hardware is EndeavourOS, and I've loved it. Used Ubuntu WSL for 6 months or so, then dipped installed NixOS, and have been happier. Yeah. I feel like everything's fucking better than Ubuntu. Or maybe I'm just an elite. No, I'm definitely an elitist. I feel like come on now. You want to switch to Linux, and then you pick Ubuntu? Like, really? Like, it's like coming to a restaurant and ordering French fries. I mean, sure, they're probably going to be tasty, but you could also pick something cooler and more interesting than fucking Ubuntu. It's a common kind of idea in the Linux space that it's absolutely fine if you use Ubuntu. It's okay, use whatever you want to use. But also, I'm kind of like disappointed a bit, you know? Because, well, saying that Ubuntu is not going to be your best experience uh, is not true. It might be because of how much support Ubuntu gets. It actually might be the best experience for you, depending on your use case. So it's not really an argument that you want to make. It's just not that cool, honestly. Like, it's not a strong argument, but I think it's important to use something that is, despite being good, is also cool, you know? It's a steep learning curve for a distro. Yeah, I would imagine. At least get potato wedges. True. Well, I guess I have the same exact opinion on Mint. With Fedora, I'm not as like strongly against it, you know? But I switched to Ubuntu because Windows is annoying. Can get him on anything else since he doesn't really like configuring stuff. Yeah, like Ubuntu, I guess, is perfect for this type of use case where you just want to switch off Windows, or maybe you do want to switch to Linux, but you're not that interested into going deep into configuration and all that stuff. Yeah, yeah. Ubuntu is just fine. It's of course like because it is Linux, it's going to be miles better than Windows. Uh, but just there are miles better things than Ubuntu, you know. But some things really, rather, some people don't care about that much, which is like understandable, but still hurts me, you know. It shouldn't, by all accounts. I shouldn't care, but you know, the reason this channel exists is because I couldn't shut up about cool things that I wanted other people to also use. My first video, whatever, my second video is about AutoHotkey v2 arrow functions. I found them so cool and I wanted to explain them. I wanted to share them with other people to make sure that other people also used v2 and used arrow functions because they're so cool. So when I see people use not the best / coolest thing, it kind of hurts me. It's very unreasonable, I understand, but like, you know. Though for some reason he was on Kali for a bit to evade taxes. Still have no idea why Kali is a thing. Because people like the idea of being a hacker, even if they have no idea of what being a hacker is like. So they jump there. I'm sure it's actually like useful for hackers, but like, you know, like if you're a hacker, do you want to be fucking around with Debian like mirrors and stuff? Like Debian repos? Do you want to be dealing with that? Wouldn't you just go Arch and install the programs? You know? I guess I don't know. I haven't used the functionality of Kali to really have an opinion on this, honestly. Me for Paradress. If I was talking about something, now I don't remember. Yes, no, null. Yeah, I effectively explained everything on like a top-down level here. If you'd want more specifics about how all of this works, you'll just have to struggle like I did. But the main ideas I explained on the stream. I hope it was helpful. Oh, same for prepared to ask. I've never actually heard of it. I still have this thing here, which I would forget if I didn't write this down. So it was a really good idea to write this down. Yeah, I hate how in schools, I'll give this an example with English. It feels like in schools they're not actually interested in making you learn, or they're not interested in you learning. And they also teach you in such a way that you won't. One distinct thing about English classes that I remember from school is that we keep on repeating the same thing again and again and again because nobody ever learned it. And nobody ever remembers the rules, and we keep relearning them because nobody ever learns them, like, completely and actually. And that is, as I understood it, it is effectively expected that you don't know the subjects. Even those that you have gone through many, many, many times. So I learned English at 14. At 15, I could speak freely. I'm Russian, by the way, in case somebody doesn't know. English is not my first language. So, boom, I learned English. Cool, I switched to a different school, which is like a high school plus middle school. From like low school, I don't know what it's called. I recommend putting the require, now let's call output to a variable, because I think it's re-evaled each time. What? What do you mean? DM me about it, not stream content. So, yeah, I switched to a different school and I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. I'm gonna get this new teacher in a new cool school. I'm gonna learn so much English. And here the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of disappointment came, where I have been better at English than every single one of my English teachers since 14 years old. And then, yeah, no wonder why we keep repeating the same subjects, because even the teachers are not that good. No wonder there's like no good education of the language. And also the lessons are structured in such a way that it feels like they're made specifically to make you hate learning languages and feel like you're bad at it. Almost every person I've ever met, I mean Russian, you know, have said to me, oh, I'm so bad at languages. I know that this is not the case. They're not actually bad at languages. They're just traumatized by our education system in many ways, but here specifically in language learning, to think that they're bad. They're not bad, they was just horribly taught in a way perfectly structured so they would guaranteed not learn English. Learning English or learning a language is not as hard as our education system makes it out to be. And it specifically makes it this difficult so that Russians don't learn English and they can't leave this horrible country. That's my conspiracy theory. I think it's real. But, I mean, it's a conspiracy theory for a reason. And it's really sad because I've given like small lessons of English to people, and they were like, oh, that's actually, oh, I get it. What the fuck? And I'm like, yeah, of course, you get it, because it's not as difficult as school makes it out to be. So, yeah. And the reason why this even appeared here, because somewhere along here, Sast, you said that you were studying what arrays are in C++ for the 13th time in school. And yeah, like, once again, I hate that. The fact that schools teach you in a really shit way and then expect you to not have been taught, and so they repeat the same thing instead of actually teaching you the thing to begin with. It's really sad. And then I have to fucking speak Russian with people. That's the most annoying part. You know, like, I already live in a shit country. I would rather at least be able to speak English here. But no, I have to fucking, what's it in Russian every other second. It's really annoying. Also, I missed some other chat messages that I don't like missing. By the way, plus and minus are really good. They're really difficult to get used to, by the way. But that's why hard time is probably going to be a really good idea, especially if you're just starting. Yeah. Incredibly good idea, yeah. When you just start out, please try your best to do it in this way. Learn how to do the thing in a default manner, how you do it by default. Learn it to an extent where it feels like where you don't really have to think about it, where you can do it with muscle memory. And then if at that point you still realize, nah, this fucking sucks, then you should remap it. Or should is a strong word, but you can. So try not to be quick with remappings. Like, I think that's very, very important. Because some things in Neovim, if you remap them, it gets like very fucking annoying. It gets really annoying because then you have to remap them in every fucking single plugin, and other places that conveniently have Vim mappings, but they are default mappings. So you have to use different ones because you don't always have the ability to configure them in other different programs. But the muscle memory is convenient. So, for example, HJKL, for the love of God, do not change them. And also $sign and caret to go to the beginning of the line, I also don't recommend changing. Those are like the most used everywhere thingies. Yeah, and overall, if you can get used to a default, it's a good idea. If you have gotten used to it and it's still ass, then change it. Boom. GH selection. I've never used it. GH has always been go hover for me. Now it's different. Now it's comma LE. So I don't even know what it is. Brilliant. You with Italian, I know, right? English is just kind of more convenient. The amount of words that we still steal to Russian from English is insane. All because we just don't have words to express seemingly easy concepts. But our language is so rich. If you ever see a prideful Russian talking about how rich their language is, spit them in their face. Why am I so angry? I mean, that's unsurprising. Like, if you've been on my streams, I feel like I mention how much I hate Russia and Russians like every stream. Yeah, really not a fan. Yeah, I think that's it for the stream, because as you can see by this, I am supposed to be hungry, and probably once I end stream, I'm like, oh fuck, I'm actually really hungry and I didn't realize it. And that's exactly why this widget exists, to remind me to eat, because otherwise I'll be configuring something for 6 hours only to not realize that I'm super fucking hungry. So thank you for watching, everyone, and